If you're looking for a compact sim racing cockpit that doesn't compromise on rigidity, the RCE might already be on your shortlist. Next Level Racing claims it supports direct drive wheelbases up to 13 Nm, so let's see whether it really delivers. Inside the box you'll find the frame, the folded seat, a detailed instruction manual, all the mounting hardware for your peripherals, the required assembly tools, Velcro cable ties, spacers for clamp-based wheelbases, a keychain, and something I have never seen before, a bolt measuring card. Overall, it's a very complete package. The only thing I really missed was a shifter mount. That's something Next Level Racing includes with many of its other cockpits, and its absence makes the RCE a little less appealing for trucking or casual driving with an H-pattern shifter. Constructing the RCE was pretty straightforward. I didn't run into any issues putting it together, and I think part of this is because of the good manual that is included with it. If any other manufacturers are watching this video, please take this manual of RCE and make one of your own also. The only thing that I had some issues with was mounting the pedals to the pedal base holder. That was a bit harder because you don't have a lot of room under the pedal base holder. But I would say, yeah, very, very, very nice. When you open the box, that all goes so smooth. The only part of the cockpit that can be adjusted without tools is the seat itself. It's mounted on sliding rails that provide around 15 cm of fore and aft adjustment, allowing you to move closer to or further away from the pedals. Unlike the GT Racer, however, the seat back angle cannot be adjusted, and that's a feature I really do miss. The configuration for the wheelbase holder on the RCE is pretty extensive for a tubular sim rig. You have the ability to slide the wheelbase holder closer to you. There is 5 cm of play there. You can also lift it up for 4 cm with a minimum height of 63 cm and a maximum height of 67 cm. On top of that, you can also incline it, so the back you can have at 67 cm and the front a bit lower, or vice versa. So very, very extensive configuration on this part. The configuration of the pedal base holder is a bit limited in my opinion. You can tilt it and that is about it. You start out with 3.5 cm at the front and you can lift the back between the 12 cm and 16 cm. Of course, you can also turn the entire pedal base holder around, and then you have a bit of a flat surface like you see here on which you can mount the pedals. This is particularly handy for pedals like Logitech G Pro that are already a bit slanted backwards. Of course, it doesn't have any negative inclination, which I mean it goes like this. So pedals like the LC100 pedals of Camus that I have, which are more of a straight angle, they won't fit on the pedal base holder of the RCE. Of course, this is a minority of pedals. Most pedals are in this shape already, so the inclination that you have here, yeah, it will suit most of the budget pedals out there. Both the wheelbase mount and the pedal tray require tools whenever you want to change their position. It isn't difficult, but it's worth knowing if you frequently switch between different drivers or hardware. Finding a comfortable driving position wasn't difficult at all. The generous vertical and horizontal adjustment of the wheelbase mount made it surprisingly easy to dial everything in exactly the way I wanted. Overall, the build quality is solid. Despite using relatively slim 25mm steel tubing, the cockpit feels reassuringly sturdy once it's fully assembled. The welds aren't flawless, but they're certainly adequate. The tubes slide together without any issues, and every bolt lines up exactly where it should. That's something you quickly appreciate during assembly, because there are no moments where you're fighting the hardware to make things fit. The matte black powder coating is a fairly generic one in appearance, but it feels durable and proved reasonably resistant to scratches during my time with the cockpit. There are, however, a few finishing details I like to see improved. At the front, the curved uprights don't sit perfectly flush against the lower frame. Whether that's intentional or simply a manufacturing tolerance, I leave up to Next Level Racing, but visually it does stand out. The supplied spacers are, yeah, another example. They work perfectly well, but they're just simple straight cylinders. A set of curved spacers would have blended into the design much better and given the cockpit a more premium appearance. My biggest criticism, however, is the acrylic front badge. The badge itself looks perfectly fine, but attaching it with double-sided tape cheapens the overall impression. Personally, I think 6 small bolts would have looked far more professional and would have been much more in line with the industrial nature of the cockpit. One component that genuinely impressed me though is the seat. The upholstery is neatly finished, feels robust and gives the impression that it's built to last. It's easily one of the highlights of this entire package. For testing the pedal tray, I'm using the Logitech G Pro pedals. They use a full-size pedal plate together with a brake pedal that isn't particularly demanding in terms of force. Next Level Racing made a clever engineering decision with the design of the pedal tray. Instead of placing the support brackets near the outer edges, they are positioned further towards the center, exactly where the highest braking forces are applied. Combined with the reinforced bends along both sides of the tray, the result is an impressively rigid structure. During testing, I couldn't feel any flex whatsoever. Even after reviewing the footage frame by frame, this is probably the stiffest pedal tray I've tested so far on a tubular cockpit. For the wheelbase test, I'm using the Logitech RS50, running at its full 8 Nm of torque. Once again, I came away genuinely impressed. During driving, the wheel deck felt remarkably stable, any side-to-side movement was barely noticeable and only became visible when reviewing the footage afterwards. The additional front and side supports clearly do their job. Since Next Level Racing rates the cockpit for wheelbases up to 13 Nm, I'll be pushing it much harder in a future comparison against another tubular cockpit. But based on this review alone, I can confidently say that it handles 8 Nm effortlessly. The only noticeable movement I did observe actually came from the base frame itself. If you deliberately pull the steering wheel towards you, it's possible to lift the front of the cockpit slightly off the floor. It's not something that happens during normal driving, but it is worth mentioning for the sake of completeness. When it comes to movement of the included seat, there is some movement visible while driving, but I never found it distracting. Considering the category this cockpit competes in, I think the seat performs very well. Of course, this isn't a rigid fiberglass bucket seat, so if you're a very competitive sim racer, chasing every last tenth of a second, you may prefer something stiffer. But for the audience this cockpit is aimed at, I think Next Level Racing struck a very good balance between comfort and support. The overall design is intentionally quite Spartan. Of course, design is highly subjective. Personally, I would have liked to see a little more character. The seat is actually the visual highlight of the cockpit. The combination of the racing suede and the breathable mesh fabric gives it a very premium appearance while also helping to dissipate heat during longer driving sessions. The frame, on the other hand, is very functional. The slim black tubing creates a clean and understated look, but it doesn't really stand out from the crowd. Again, that's entirely subjective and some people may actually appreciate its understated appearance. Getting in and out of the RCE is very easy. It comes relatively high and you also don't have any blocking frame structure for you to get in. So very easy to get in and out. When it comes to the comfort of the seat, also very good. It is a bit the same philosophy as I saw with the other Next Level Racing seats like the PRS2, the ERS, GT Track. So this is a budget version, but it also sits very comfortable. It does have some bolsters at the back, but even if you have a bit broader shoulders, because they don't protrude too much, you're not that blocked by them. When you are racing, you feel that they offer you also quite a lot of firmness for your shoulders. So I think they are very well done. Same goes for the bolstering at the bottom. Here they don't protrude that much either, which is good for people that have a bit wider thighs. They will fit in it also without having too much of the bolstering poking on them. So I think for comfort, this seat very good. Because the RCE doesn't use dedicated rubber feet, vibrations from the wheelbase are transferred directly into the floor. On my laminate floor, that resulted in noticeably more resonance, particularly when cornering. It's not something you'll necessarily notice when you're driving and if you're wearing headphones, but anyone else in the house certainly might. If you often race late at night or share your home with light sleepers, I'd strongly recommend placing the cockpit on a mat or a carpet. It makes a surprisingly noticeable difference. The footprint of the RCE is also very good. 150 centimeters in length, 54 centimeters in width, and 103 centimeters in height. Combine that with a weight of 25 kilograms and you get a very space-efficient sim rig. Next Level Racing is one of the biggest manufacturers when it comes to logistics, so it is available in 57 countries. The RCE can be bought via their webshop or via various retailers in your neighborhood. Its MSRP is €399, but if you go via a retailer, it can be a bit lower also. When it comes to extra accessories and features, well, at this moment there are no specific features or options available for the RCE, but you can have like a little mat to put under it or a display stand without any issue. As always, if you would like to compare the RCE with other products I've tested so far, you can find it mentioned in the comparison matrix on scenetourist.eu. It's the easiest way to see exactly where this cockpit stands against the competition. Overall, I think the RCE is a well-executed cockpit. Next Level Racing clearly had a specific goal in mind and made some deliberate choices to get there. Features such as shifter mount, rubber feet, and some of the finer finishing touches have been left out, helping to keep the cockpit both simple and competitively priced. In return, you get a cockpit with excellent rigidity, a comfortable seating position, and good wheelbase adjustment. Throughout my testing, those strengths consistently outweighed the compromises. It won't be the right cockpit for everyone, but if your priority is a solid GT cockpit without paying for features you may never use, the RCE is a very convincing package. For those reasons, the Next Level Racing RCE falls just short of S tier, but comfortably earns an A tier rating. Thank you all for watching. Like, hype and or subscribe if you had something from the content. Buy via an affiliate link to help a friend out, and I will see you all next video. Bye bye.